morning, everyone. This is Jim Clark once again with Northwest Spotlight. And today we are blessed with Dave Graybill. Dave is known to many of you as the fishing magician. He's been providing reports on fishing in north central Washington for over 20 years. His reports are carried on radio stations in eastern Washington, on KVI AM 570 in Seattle. And the reports appear on his website, which receives over 90,000 unique visits per month, and his Facebook page. He writes an exclusive article each week for the Spokane Exchange, and that is distributed widely throughout Eastern Washington. He also produces informative videos, which have over 2 million views. And I was just talking to Dave here about that. I've looked at his YouTube page, some pretty entertaining and pretty informative stuff there. Dave, welcome. Thank you for taking time. I know we've kind of crossed paths here a little bit, but we're doing it today. So how are you feeling and how are things going?
Just excellent. Yeah, I had a good trip yesterday out fishing. You know, people often ask me, well, what do you do in the winter? Well, winter's just as busy over here as the summer. There's lots of opportunities, and that's what I like to do, Jim, is provide the current information about the opportunities available here in Central Washington.
And you're, obviously you're promoting Moses Lake as part of what we do with Moses Lake is really try and help promote that region as a destination for people here on the west side, but people from all over the country as well. And what species are available in Moses Lake this time of year or other times of year?
Well, I'll start off. If we get cold enough weather and get a cap of ice on Moses Lake, the perch fishing can be the best of any place in the region. It's known for jumbo perch, and I mean over 13 inches.
Wow. And
so that draws a big crowd in the winter months, but also available on Moses Lake. Probably the prime species that people fish for is walleye. And there's an excellent population of smallmouth bass and largemouth bass, and of course perch and crappie. But the Moses Lake is really known as one of the best walleye fisheries in the state, and the smallmouth bass fishing and bass fishing is right up there. But it's gotten more attention, and there's actually some tournaments on both Moses Lake now for bass.
So you're talking about ice fishing for perch, right?
Ice fishing for perch in probably, January, maybe February. And then things really get rolling for the other species I mentioned probably in April is about the time frame. Maybe late March, April is when people really gear up to hit Moses Lake for the walleye particularly, and then of course the bass.
One thing that I noticed when I did look at your YouTube page and was watching some of the videos there, you really are an advocate for how to, that's really, I think, a great thing, because that's what brings new people into the sport and keeps people also activated in the sport as well. And that's really a great thing. And what methods are used for fishing for perch or crappie or any of the other species, walleye, specifically on Moses Lake?
Well, a real most often employed method, I will say, is to troll with bottom bouncers and spinners. There is a video on the Dave Graybill YouTube channel that describes a day on the water last year in May. We were out with Guide Austin Mosier, and we had a boatload of people from Bobfile Boats and Motors on board that day. And that's a really good video to give people an idea of what it's like in the early spring when the fish are in the very shallow north end of the lake. And we were trolling with the spinners and bottom bouncers, but on side planers, because we're fishing in very shallow water.
Right.
And so whenever I do with the video, and I've been blessed, a lot of the local guides are willing to take me out and even show me, how they do it, and they're out there every day. So they really are on top of things, and they're willing to share their information with people. And that particular video is a good example of that, where we take time to show people exactly what we're doing. That was an excellent day, and we fished for walleye first thing in the morning. Then we switched gears and fished for smallmouth bass. So it's a good example of what people can expect from Moses Lake in the early spring.
And how did you get the name Fishing Magician? Where did that come from?
That was kind of an accident. You know, when I first started this, we had to do things on the old cart machines, and when I first started doing things with KBI, I had to sit down with the producer, put it on tape, FedEx it over to Seattle to make my deadlines. And D. Fred Kuntz, who was my producer at the time and a good friend for many years, he asked me sort of that same question. And I recalled that I had sent a letter to a friend confirming his visit to Chelan, where I was living at the time. And I signed it Fishing Magician. And I have no idea where it came from. Just popped off the top of my head. And of course, D. Fred crowned me with that title, and it's stuck. And it's been with me now for over 20 years.
I always wondered about that. That's great. And do people fish from shore in that area in Moses Lake? Are there shore access for people that might not be able to get out on the water?
There is shore access along Conley Park, for example. One of the most popular places for people that are, I'll say, shorebound is on the I-90 bridge that goes right across one of the arms of Moses Lake. And it's not unusual at all to drive by there and see a good number of people fishing from that bridge. Also, the riprap shoreline along the I-90 bridge there is an excellent place. I've spent many days fishing for perch off of that riprap. And even one occasion, we brought down a whole bunch of our family, spread them out across the riprap, caught a bunch of perch, went home and had a great perch feed. It was a great day.
Nice. You should put out a cooking book, maybe a recipe book for all your
Yes.
stuff there. What methods do you like to use for walleye? And walleye is becoming a very popular species now for people in the state of Washington. We all know about the fishery on the Columbia, but what are people doing in Moses Lake to catch walleye?
Again, probably the most often employed method is trolling with spinners behind bottom bouncers with a night crawl. Now, another very effective method that you can employ is with crankbaits. And this is a variety of plugs, whether they're flicker shads or rapalas, or there's a wide range of plugs that you can pull behind the boat. And again, these are usually done behind a side planer. The reason that we use the side planers is we're typically in very shallow water in Moses Lake. It's not a really deep lake. And so you want to move your baits away from the boat, because it's just a natural instinct of fish to move away from the boat when that shadow goes over them. And so they'll move away from the boat. And by putting those side planers out, then we put them in the path where the fish have moved to.
Nice. And so bass angling on Moses Lake is becoming sort of a bigger deal. There are actually tournaments now, as I understand it, on Moses Lake. And what methodologies are used for bass? I mean, drop shotting, obviously spinnerbait, stuff like that. What is the most successful in your feelings in terms of catching bass on Moses Lake?
Well, some of the more popular lures that people are familiar with, for example, Senkos, work very effectively, and you can cast. There's a lot of docks on Moses Lake, and so casting to those docks and letting those baits sink right next to the shadow of the dock is very effective. There's tremendous shorelines full of reeds and weeds and rock breaks. And again, the Senkos are very effective there. You can cast jigs as well. There's most of the if people are familiar with bass fishing, you can employ just about all the things that you use on your favorite lake. But I like to suggest for people, say, that are new to it, to use a Senko, which is a very simple way to attach a bait to a lure, and they work. They're very effective. Now you'll have to experiment with colors a bit, but anywhere along the shoreline, you will find smallmouth bass and largemouth bass too. And they're very abundant, and they can be a really good size too. And then there's a period in May when, of course, the fish are going to go on the beds, and you can actually see those beds quite clearly in the clear water of the lake, and they're just sort of a dark spot on the bottom, essentially. And then drop shots can be really effective to put that right in the bed. We've also had good success casting lures and then dragging them through or nearby those beds.
Nice.
Had very good success.
Yeah. If anyone out there has fished for bass anywhere else in the country, I really encourage you to check out Moses Lake. It is a fishery. You get there and you line up your colors and what methods are working that day, and you're gonna catch a few fish. It'll be a lot of fun. Absolutely.
There is another video I did, Jim, on fishing in the spring that I did several years ago. But of course, the methods we used with one of the local guides at that time would still work, and we caught some excellent fish on that particular trip. That's worth a look too.
Where does a boat owner launch from on Moses Lake? Are there a lot of launch places, and how does that work?
Yeah, there's some really good launches. The one that I use quite often is Conley Park, which is at the north end of the lake. Because in the early spring, I'm running up the lake, usually to the shallow areas. And that's a free launch. It's got a nice basin with two-sided launch with a dock in the middle. And then there's Blue Heron Park, which is down toward that I-90 bridge that accesses a tremendous amount of really good water. It gets a lot of activity. Again, an excellent launch with a lot of parking, close to that I-90 bridge, for example, and a lot of other good water down toward that end of the lake. Then toward the bottom end of the lake, there's one called Peninsula, and it's on the shoreline there on the west side of the lake. And that's one I used most recently later in the fall, and we had an excellent day accessing the lake from Peninsula.
And Moses Lake is an interesting village, interesting town there. There's obviously a lot of different places to stay, but what are some of the options for people, if they do go over there and want to spend a few days up to a week or so? Where would you recommend that they stay? Or if they're RVers and they want a place to park their RV?
There's so many options. I don't know where to start. Moses Lake has really grown, and in Central Washington, it's a very vibrant community. There's been a lot of growth in Moses Lake over the 20 years that I've been fishing there. There's everything from a Motel 6 on up to some of the higher end motels. You can pick your comfort level and budget and find a good place there. And the number of restaurants has increased, and there's some, even one of the local taverns that we go to has just excellent breakfasts in the mornings, and you can find anything you want. And then of course it's got every other kind of store that you can imagine if you need to buy tackle or equipment. There's a Sportsman's Warehouse, there's a Walmart, there's all of those good things that supply us anglers. And so there's a tremendous variety of lodging that fits any budget, dining that fits any budget, and then it has all the other amenities that anyone that is going to visit Moses Lake for a weekend or a week They can take good care of you there.
And there's also a ton of RV places there too, where people can park their RV. There's, again, goes from good, better, best all the way up, but there's explore there, look at the Moses Lake website. Absolutely can find just about everything you need right there.
I would highly recommend that. So that's always, as most people do now, if you're planning an adventure anywhere, the first thing you do is log on to the local chamber or city website, and you'll find a wealth of information.
And they've done a great job at managing that site and really making it really navigable for anyone, and a lot of good information there. Other than Moses Lake, are there other opportunities nearby there that people could enjoy?
Absolutely. Just to, and this is something that I will do myself, is I'll spend a day or two on Moses Lake, and then I'll hop down just 16 miles away is Potholes Reservoir, which is a huge reservoir. And they, again, it's on the kind of the same timetable of fisheries as they develop as Moses Lake, because it's so nearby. So the walleye fishing gets in gear about the same time. It has excellent bass fishing. Potholes has been a site for walleye and bass tournaments for decades. And between Moses Lake and Potholes, I'll mention Banks Lake, which is to the north. Those are the three premier walleye lakes in the state, right there. And so, yeah, you can spend a week there and you can touch some of the better fisheries for walleye and bass within easy reach of Moses Lake. And Potholes has several boat launches. The same techniques apply when you're fishing for walleye and bass. Mardon Resort is, and there's this, everybody's probably heard of Mardon Resort, and they have probably the best RV facilities of a place around there. And they also have good access. You know, one of the things that's popular at Mardon is their dock fishing. It's amazing how many people just fish from the docks there and make excellent catches of crappie and everything that's in the lake. The trout fishing is pretty good on Potholes Reservoir as well. But so in the spring, you can bounce back and forth between Moses Lake and Potholes, and they're very close by. And as I say, they're on about the same timetable. So it's a great place to explore if you make a trip to Moses Lake.
Yeah, Mardon, I don't know, but I do remember they did some great duck hunting also in the fall there. That's
yes, they're still running the duck taxi.
Running the duck taxi, yeah, that's quite a cool thing if you've never done it. So Dave, anything else that people should know about getting to Moses Lake, and what's the next best option in terms of coming up here after the new year for fisher people out there? Right.
That's the thing. Access to Moses Lake is very easy. I-90, you know, passes right through the heart of town. And so that's a quick way. And then Highway 2 coming from Spokane, or I-90, both can access the lake. And I would keep an eye out for the ice conditions. You know, I would check in with maybe the chamber or someone you know over there. I have a lot of friends that live there that I fish with regularly, and I'll call them and they keep an eye on the ice, because if it does form, that's really a fun fishery. It might be brief, but I've run into people that have come from Seattle over to take a part in that ice fishery, because the perch fishing is really spectacular. And then it's a spring thing. And, you know, that's when most people want to get geared up and head over there. And I should say that, you know, obviously my interest is in fishing on the lake, but it's also a great place to explore from a small boat or a kayak or canoe. There's lots of channels and places you can explore. Crab Creek, you know, which is between Moses Lake and Potholes. You can just wander around. The dunes area on Potholes Reservoir is very popular in that respect. And of course, just families that like to powerboat, whether it's in you know, a runabout or a pontoon boat, or there's a lot of water between those two lakes and a lot of water to explore. And so it's a great way to get out in the water, and the birding is tremendous over there. There's lots of wildlife to observe while you're on the water.
Just a great place to get away with your family, and definitely family-friendly environment. And if you've never been to that part of the state, I definitely invite you to look at the Moses Lake website. Dave, how can people get a hold of you if they want to contact you directly?
Oh, sure. You know, the best way to do that is to open my website at fishingmagician.com, and there's a contact button. And I mean, I just got a couple of notes this morning while we were talking that I am going to respond to, and I'm usually pretty good. It might take me a day or two, but I always respond to emails with questions. I also want to mention that I'm just now doing the final edit on my quarterly e-letter that's free, that I send out to subscribers that sign up to it. And it's like, this one is the winter issue. And so I have 2 feature-length stories about winter fisheries that are popular over here. And then I have the top 10 prospects from around the region that people can look to in the winter. And then also in this particular issue, I added another 10 top ice fishing destinations.
Wow.
So again, that's free. It's easy to sign up. You just look at my website, and up in the left-hand corner, click the button, and you get added to the list.
Cool. We've been talking to Dave Graybill. He's the fishing magician. We've been talking about Moses Lake and some of the other opportunities in that part of Washington State. Dave, we really want to thank you for joining us today. I know you've been a busy guy the last few days, and we finally were able to connect, and we had some technical issues earlier in the week, and those things can happen. So again, I really want to thank you. And once again, Dave Graybill, the fishing magician. Thanks.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. We'll do it again sometime.